Hey, hi. So I'm Dania. I'm a learning technologist from Sheffield Hallam University. First, I just wanted to say thank you. It's a pleasure to be presenting here today. Thank you for organizing, all the organizers and the collaborators for this brilliant event. Today, I'm just going to be talking about the accessibility related data insights and the evaluation project that I carried out last year and how myself and my team has implemented things this year. I will also be sharing some insights into where we are considering we've completed semester one this year and comment on future considerations related to accessibility. So at Sheffield Hallam University, we've made a decision to switch to Blackboard Ultra from Blackboard Original in the 2024-25, basically this year. So last year, two departments had agreed to switch to using Ultra ahead of time, and this presented an opportunity to evaluate this transition and collect some staff and student feedback. This also meant that we could use this period to develop and understand our understanding and support resources to be able to support the university-wide transition. So in terms of the objectives, Anthology, the creators of Blackboard Ultra, they made claims about this new VLE product. They claimed that Blackboard Ultra was built with mobile use and accessibility in mind. Naturally, I wanted to include these as part of the evaluation objectives. I also wanted to know what was good, what was bad, and the things that we could improve on. For the sake of the time limit of today, I'll only be discussing the accessibility findings. So for the evaluation, I used mixed methods online surveys to collect staff and student perceptions. I wanted to keep the surveys short and not overburden the staff and students with too many questions. I had one quantitative accessibility related question for each of the staff and student surveys, and there was a qualitative open-ended question at the end for users to add additional comments. I also used Blackboard Ally institution report, which basically collects accessibility course data from the back end of Blackboard to triangulate and inform whether these survey findings were in agreement with the accessibility reports. Please note that the sample size for the evaluation was small, so I only had 1,480 students last year, and I also had 205 staff with the 91 module sites that agreed from the two departments that went into Ultra. So this slide just shows the graph representation of the Likert scale of the accessibility questions in the student and staff surveys. The top graph shows the student results, indicating that 74% of students who answered the survey were using alternative formats. You can see that there is almost an equal distribution of mixed opinions using this alternative format, which was quite interesting. And then diving into thematic analysis of the qualitative data indicated that students found the sites to be text heavy, as in there wasn't enough images or icons used to distinguish content. There was also some attachments that were not named correctly, making it difficult to find the right content. And then there was also mentioning of headers, both as praise when used correctly and as pain points when they were not used in the correct manner. The bottom graph shows the staff results, indicating that 50% of staff who answered the survey were not using Ally accessibility features in Blackboard. Broadly speaking, we've got 39% had a positive experience and a small minority had negative experiences with Ally. These results are quite concerning and indicate the need for improvement. The thematic analysis of staff opinions identified confusion or being lost in menu options, mixed understanding of what Blackboard Ally does and requesting further training. Some staff had used alternative format to download PDF versions of their content and indicated that that was an essential part of their course. There was also concern about Blackboard site themes not being dyslexia friendly, so in terms of color contrast customization. Some staff did indicate that Ultra had helped them make their content more accessible, and they would prefer it were over the Blackboard Classic version. Now, if we contrast these results with the Blackboard Ally institution reports for semester 1 of last year, it shows in the 91 module sites, students had interacted with the alternative format feature 3,755 times and used the alternative format just over 2,000 times, meaning that there was a high use of this feature by these students in these two departments. As for staff, launching the course accessibility report, it was only triggered 8 times, and strikingly, only 4 out of the 91 module sites have used this feature, which is really bad. To make things even worse, there was only 37 accessibility fixes out of 6,000 identified accessibility issues. So these results are not great at all. There is a clear need for us to raise awareness for accessibility and its benefits. Notably though, Blackboard Ultra sites had an average score of 47.7%, which was quite surprising considering that not many staff had used the Blackboard Ally features. It also indicates that staff are making their content accessible, possibly using different means, such as Microsoft Accessibility Checker. In an ideal world, we want to make these accessibility scores improve. So comparing the Blackboard Ally institution reports from last year with this year in semester 1, these arbitrary numbers first need to be normalized to make meaningful comparison. As last year, we only had 91 module sites, and this year we've got 2,563. So the orange table is related to the staff data, and the green bit is related to student data. So for instructor feedback and fixes, the module engagement have slightly decreased from last year. Staff had launched the instructor feedback and implemented fixes less frequently than last year. The number of accessibility issues detected by Ally has significantly increased by 63%, which is due to many reasons, including content that's been copied from old module sites without checking for accessibility issues, and different types of content presented on the module requiring different or more elaborate accessibility work. Meanwhile, there's a major positive change in launching the course accessibility reports. Both the frequency of report launches per module and the percentage of modules using the report more than doubled. This suggests a greater awareness and monitoring of accessibility issues. As for the average Ally scores of Blackboard Ultra sites, despite the increase in identified issues, the average scores improved slightly from 74.7 to 75.24. This small improvement across a much larger sample is encouraging. Now, moving on to student insights, there's a significant increase in student launching the alternative formats per window, the alternative formats window per module, so 62%. This could suggest that students are much more aware and interested in exploring alternative formats this year, or that the intensity of the use of this feature has potentially been different across the university, therefore making the sample of the students in the two departments from last year not very representative as the whole student population. The number of actual downloads per module has increased even more dramatically this year by 77%. This could suggest that students aren't just looking at options in the alternative format window, they're actually actively using them more frequently. This data could be interesting to explore further to understand how and why students are downloading in alternative formats. Putting the data together, while staff engagement per module has slightly decreased, the student engagement with the alternative formats has dramatically increased. This could indicate that accessibility features are becoming more student-driven rather than staff-driven, which could actually be a positive development for the accessibility adoption as an institutional goal. Now, for my final slide, a few recommendations here. So Potentially to improve the instructor engagement is we could share the data showing that while fixes needed per module are increased, staff fixes per module has decreased. Framing these as an opportunity to better serve the students who are clearly interested in accessible content could be one way to leverage this. And then targeting training, so developing brief focused training sessions spread across key academic calendars and department-specific needs. Other things we can do is create a recognition program, acknowledge staff who are have significant Ally scores and the ones who are maintaining consistent high scores. Other things we can do is establish peer mentors, so interdepartmental kind of support system. Faculty often responds better to colleagues rather than central support. And then I think more importantly, sharing that student usage data. So many instructors may not actively, they don't know that students are using the alternative formats. So showing that 77% increase in the downloads per module could motivate staff to improve the accessibility. Thank you for listening.
That's a fabulous presentation there, Dania. Very, very interested. You've had quite a few comments and questions in the chat. Feel free to address those, but we'll circle back to some of that in the questions at the end, Dania. So again, you know, people are very impressed with your mixed methods research approach to evaluating Blackboard's claims on their accessibility. Well done, you. Really impressed with the work. So I think you have answered things in the chat, but I wondered if you wanted to summarize some of the answers. And people were mostly concerned about the fact that it was the design of the buttons that maybe led students to click on the alt formats button when maybe they were just wanting to download the original format. So that was point number one. And then the point number two was whether by trying to get to 100% accessibility, they were just taking the inaccessible files and hosting them elsewhere. So those two questions, Dania.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one because from a student perspective, they want to get access to their content as quickly as possible. And so sometimes what you do find with Blackboard Ultra is some students are just looking for that content, searching for it, and then they just want to download it as quickly as possible to maybe to prep for the lecture or something. So often at times they would click at the most obvious button, and that could be the alternative formats button. I suppose from a design element, they could try to improve that the design of that icon to make it a little bit more meaningful for people. Or maybe there needs to be some raised awareness at the beginning of when the students get inducted to actually make them appreciate that there are these capabilities that are available to them so that they can make more meaningful decisions behind clicking buttons and downloading content. As for staff who are copying content from old sites and hosting things on not very accessible ways to try and bypass the process, yeah, that's a tricky one. Most of the time. So what we have been recommending to staff, because we've only just done a university-wide rollout this year, the old content, if it doesn't have any new updated material, we've kind of drawn the line to say, yes, you can just copy it across as long as there's no new modifications. Whereas if the content is going to be adapted for, I don't know, because the module is getting reappraised or, you know, changing slightly, we do ask them, it's within their right to actually check the content for accessibility. So this is where we've kind of created a, I suppose, a little dampener for certain people who don't want to go through old content and, you know, check the accessibility again. One of the things that I would like to do, if we did have the manpower, is to potentially try and find the 10% least accessible content on the Blackboard sites, identify which modules are impacted, and find out which modules have the most engagement in terms from student perspective, and kind of see where could we actually work to improve these. And across the semesters, we could potentially start creating a developmental plan for these modules to improve their accessibility. Again, with the higher education costs and changes and restructuring and things, these are very idealistic targets, but I do see that they are feasible, they are achievable, and I really wish that we could potentially try to include that in our regular work as well.
That's really interesting, and thanks for that prompt about looking at the modules that do happen to have the most engagement with alt formats. It might indicate a need from the students, and so yes, targeting those modules to make sure that more of the original materials are accessible by design benefits the most people. Not for us, Alice, we were just looking at our modules with the least accessible scores and working through those yesterday.